Hey, Alec Miller here, founder of Royals and Rogues, and today I want to talk about Trapcode Mirror. Red Giant reached out to me after seeing the logo animation we did for the new game Godfall. If you haven't checked that out, I would highly recommend you watch it. It's going to be an exciting game, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. But we did a really interesting process when it came to making the logo animation itself, which was kind of having this cool liquidy metal effect. But surprising to most people, we didn't actually use a simulation. We actually did it all in After Effects using Trapcode Mirror. And we got a lot of questions about why would you do it that way, why wouldn't you use another program, and all this other stuff. I'm going to go break down our reasoning why, our workflow, and then how we did the actual effect. So let's get into it. Trapcode Mirror is kind of an interesting plugin. It doesn't work like many other plugins that have a very clear use case. If you're going to use No Light Factory, you know you're making lens flares. If you're going to use Particular, you know you need to do particle simulations. If you're using Trapcode Mirror, though, it's like, well, you need like a 3D plane that you can manipulate and all this other stuff. I know a lot of people do use it for like topographical maps, and that's a great use case for it, but it's so much broader than that, and at the same time, not as descriptive. It's obviously, I don't think it was made solely for topographical maps, unlike something like No Light Factory, which is made solely for lens flares. So really, the sky's the limit on what you can do with Trapcode Mirror. So how Trapcode Mirror kind of actually works is it creates a 3D plane with kind of dense polygons, so you can have a lot of polygons in a small area, and you manipulate those polygons either via the settings within Trapcode Mirror or via other layers. You can actually even import your own 3D meshes and manipulate the polygons on the mesh you imported with Mirror. So the two factors that we really liked was that you could manipulate things within After Effects, and that it was also being able to be driven by other layers, meaning that we could really quickly iterate. So now that you kind of understand what Trapcode Mirror is on a base level, why did we choose to use it? Why go with that over something much more complicated like a sim? That's one of the reasons why, is it gets a lot more complicated. Simulations are great. We do them all the time. They're fantastic for coming up with very detailed and interesting looks, but the issue is they're also very resource and time heavy. In order to get a simulation into After Effects, to do the final kind of coloring and compositing, there's many steps. First, you have to run the sim, and then if anything goes wrong, you have to run it again and again until you get it pretty much where you want it. Once you get done iterating the sim, then you have to cache it. Once you've cached it, you have to render it. Once you've rendered it, you have to then import it into After Effects. And if you make any changes at all, if you want to adjust something, change the color, or a base property of the way the sim works, as there's a part that you don't like as much and you want to play down, it's either a lot of manual work and masking and all this other stuff, or you have to rerun the entire sim, which is a pain in the butt. And we are constantly iterating on this project. We didn't really know the specific look we wanted. We wanted to play around a lot. Because of that, it meant that we needed to have the freedom to keep changing things on a base level without having to re-render and recache and so on and so forth every single time. And that's really what Mirror gave us the freedom to do. You see, how we built this whole thing was all based off of a couple of noise layers. So we had two different noise layers that were driving all the animation, which means at any moment we could make one change to the base layer and it would flow all the way through to the end look without having to re-render or readjust anything. It's absolutely amazing. All the effects just kept working as they meant to work, and we could change the look, the shape, the color, the tone, how high the peaks were, how crazy the level of detail was. All of those things could be adjusted on the fly, and it would affect the end look instantaneously. This actually ended up saving our butts, because at one point the logo design changed, which meant having to re-render everything. But because it was a non-destructive pipeline, we simply swapped out the old logo for the new logo, and everything updated automatically. This allowed us to iterate very quickly, and as many times as we wanted. If the client called and said, hey, can we just tweak this a little bit? It wasn't, oh my gosh, that's going to be 2 whole days of rendering. Instead, it was, sure, we'll tweak the parameters and get you a render this afternoon. Having that sort of flexibility was incredibly powerful. Let's dive into how we actually set this all up in Mirror and what it really looks like. So here's how we made the entire effect. Now, this isn't going to be a tutorial. I'm not going to walk you step by step through every setting and little tweak that we made. Instead, I want to give you the tools to do this yourself and experiment and really play around, because that's a lesson that I want everyone to take away from this. Isn't how to create this exact look, but how to create any number of looks yourself. So it's going to be a little you know, they're not going to be 10,000 feet view, but we're going to be a little bit less detailed than a tutorial would be. But let's break this down. So at its heart, this entire thing is being ran by a couple of noise layers. That's it, just a couple of noise layers and you're ready to go. And those noise layers drive the displacement of the polygons in Mirror. The number of points we're using in the X and Y axis in Mirror are going to be the same as our canvas size. So if your frame or your canvas size is 1920 by 1080, then you're going to use that same number of points. We then drive all the displacement within Mirror from a pre-comp, and that pre-comp is where all the magic happens. So within this pre-comp is simply our logo, and you can use the depth pass or an ambient occlusion pass to get that correct black and white look, as well as a couple of noise layers and then some adjustments on there. And that's pretty much it. That runs this entire look. So the fractal noise layers are pretty extreme as far as the contrast goes. And then we simply have a liquefy effect warping it all into the center, making it all twist and kind of have that cool vortex. And then we have a levels adjustment as well as some black mats that really animate things on and off. What's cool about being able to adjust all the brightness levels is it gives us very fine control over how much or how little displacement is happening. So the darker it is, the less displaced it is, and the brighter it is, the more displaced it is. Pure white being fully displaced and pure black being not displaced at all. So you go back to Mirror, we can see how this all plays out. As the logo animates on from black to white, you can see it coming towards the camera. So then we also add in our various fractals, and you can see how those play out, motivating the amount of displacement. We actually had multiple versions of this mirror setup going, so that allowed us to get different depths. So one we could run at a very shallow level, have it be very blurred out, and the next we could have a lot higher peaks to get those sharp, bright looks. We had the camera render distance actually be pretty shallow, meaning that we didn't see the base plane that all these came from, just the very peaks of the displacement. And we had very fine artistic control over which of those peaks were the brightest or the darkest, because we could light them with in-scene lights, which means we could use the lights within After Effects to control the peaks and valleys and what was really shiny in the hot spots and what was going to be more muted and not as eye-catching, which means we could control the viewer's eyes completely the whole time they looked at this frame, which was really important. We wouldn't want viewers getting distracted by some bit of shiny material off in the corner and missing the heart of this whole render of where it happens. And in fact, if you notice, your eye kind of darts around a little bit, slowly falling into the center, just like the vortex itself. And then once the logo is revealed, you're looking right at the whole word, rather than being distracted by something on the side. After that, bring in some of the particles and other things. So more or less, the entire setup is pretty simple. It's a couple of fractal noise layers that are driving Mirror's displacement, the displacement being cut off by the shallow camera view, and then the lights triggering the hot spots, which then are what the glow gets to pick up and really make shiny. From there, it's just finishing stuff. Color correction, some more glows, some more levels adjustments, some curves adjustments, as well as some heat distortion, and then finally a bunch of particles and some shine effects. We're using a ton of Trapcode plugins here. You know, we got some looks going on. We have Trapcode Shine as well as a little bit of Star Glow, really selling in the look and bringing it all together. And then finally, we transition off to the finished logo, which is a 3D render from Cinema 4D. So hopefully this gives you a little bit more detail on how we built this whole setup. Remember that your brightness curves are super important for the results you're going to get as far as how high or low your peaks are. We played around with a lot of the render settings within Mirror, trying to get the shiny metallic look just right so that we're getting the proper reflections. And then the positioning of your lights ends up being also very important. What's also really cool is the color of your lights are carried through to Mirror as well. So meaning if we wanted something to be more red and something else to be more blue, we could light those from different sides and have them show up in the actual render. So that's why and how we used Trapcode Mirror to come up with a very unique look for this logo animation. I'm hoping what everyone takes from this is really that there's no right or wrong way to do anything in post, especially in After Effects. That's kind of the fun, but also the frustration of using After Effects is you have to kind of break it to make it do what you want. But that gives you a lot of room to play around. So grab a program like Mirror, grab something you haven't really used much, and tinker with it. Look at all the settings, see what you can use to feed into it and get out of it. play around with, creative ways. Sometimes really simple settings can be incredibly powerful. Like for us, having the camera's visibility and rendering be very, very shallow gave us just the peaks of what we wanted and a very interesting look, as opposed to if we were trying to use the valleys and everything else, it would have looked completely different. So you can play around with a few settings like that and get some very interesting results extremely quickly. And this can save you a ton of time, energy, and even money. Looking at the tools you already have and using those, rather than hiring a specialist or learning how to do liquid sims or something else like that, just for one project, where you might not even get the best look because you're just learning this. And also, a lot of those programs can be pretty costly, and it's kind of counterintuitive to me to buy a whole program just to use for one project. Now, there are plenty of projects that you might want to do something crazy like that. You might want to actually go into Cinema 4D and really build all this out in a very interesting way. But if you're just looking to iterate and mess around and get some interesting looks very quickly, I think programs like Trapcode Mirror are the way to go. So thank you to the Red Giant team for reaching out, and also for coming up with such cool products that I get to use every single day in my creative workflow. I can't wait to see what we make next, and I hope to see you guys in the next one.